Hey guys, so this week we are talking about English language learners. The first question says, what does this mean for student population? It's always going to be changing. Something that I think a lot of people don't acknowledge is that even if you don't speak a second language, there may be a big difference in the way that you communicate personally as far as with your family opposed to the way you communicate professionally or educationally with your teachers and your classmates in the classroom. So I think that in having these large populations that differ in languages, and it's not just bilingual but bidialectal, all these differences in the way that we communicate can definitely cause a lot of problems. So if we don't prepare our schools and our teachers and our students the right way, then we're going to run into a problem of differences. And when those differences are heightened or more obvious, it's harder for people to cooperate. So when you can mend those differences and you can kind of see where, oh, you are the same as me because of point A, and I have a point A that is equivalent. Seeing that reciprocity of how we are equivalent, how we are equals, is going to help people cooperate better. So if you don't provide them with those supports, which leads to that next question, they're not going to be able to connect. So as our populations are changing and increasing in the amount of languages and dialects that we are having to interact with, we definitely need to implicate in our schools more vivid and rich choices for our students in activities, books, textbooks. Anything that they interact with has to be a reflection of them and their achievements and the goal at hand. So being very intentional about the text that you use, the names you put in, the word problems. I mean, just accommodating little things like the fact that you may not be able to read that name because it is an English name, and maybe in Spanish they don't really say things like that. Let's accommodate. It's okay to say Jorge if you're not used to saying George. And so little things like that, just being very aware of our students and what they can and cannot do so that we can meet them there before they get stuck. And so I think that's our biggest thing, leading on to the third question. As an educational leader, our job, our biggest role is to model acceptance, is to provide students with that safe environment. And so when we model acceptance and we show them that, you may be different, you may speak differently than me, but at the end of the day, I want to play with you on the playground. I want to eat with you. We still get to learn. We both take the test. We are both winners. We can both achieve. And so showing them that within the community, teacher to teacher, teacher to student, leader to student, or however the case may be, if as a leader you are modeling that, then you can bet that the students will model that as well. Just showing them in morning announcements, interviews, popping into the classroom, just appreciating people's cultures. If you know that somebody speaks a different language, ask them how to say something in that language, and just making people feel welcomed and included and capitalize on those strengths, because even though we may be speaking English here and we may be teaching English, there's a time and a place in speaking about Latin roots and making those connections between the way that Miss Phillips spoke to her grandmother when she was 2 to the way she speaks to her grandmother now. And so just having those real life experiences for the kids to connect to is going to help them see you in a different light. That helps them really identify those behaviors that they want to reflect and those behaviors that they want to maybe not reflect. And when they see you do things like bump into somebody and go, oh, it's not a big deal, I was here first. Oh my goodness, I didn't even think about it. You know what? I'm so sorry. You are human. I'm a human. That doesn't mean that any one of us is any more important. So I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there, but that does not mean that it's okay for me to bump into you just because I'm a bigger person or just because I'm a girl or I have longer hair. And so just kind of changing the perspectives to show them, just because we're different doesn't mean that we cannot work together, or doesn't mean that you're not able or capable, is definitely going to be so impactful, because we could sit here and tell them all day we've got all these tools and we spent a gazillion dollars on all these tools for you to learn. They're going to look at you and say, okay, which means what in Spanish? And it's like, duh, they don't know what you're talking about. But if you just make them feel good, if you just show them you love them, then it doesn't matter what you're saying and whether they can believe you or not. They're excited to learn. And so just like in that video that we watched this week, she said, I knew what they were doing in math, and I knew how to do the math, but I didn't know the words, and because of that, I wasn't given that opportunity. And so feeling like your voice is less important, or maybe your voice isn't going to contribute to the conversation, is going to make you feel like you need to close out and like you need to participate less. So just being accepting, being very incorporating and inclusive of everybody around you, so that people don't see those opportunities to kind of stop and think and get discouraged. That is the best way that as a leader you can support your school, not only your staff but your students as well. So finally, I think that I will repeat what I just said, but for the fourth question, modeling is very important. Educating is another way to prepare your staff, so making sure that they understand different words, different things not to do, not to say, especially when it's a culture that maybe we're not very used to interacting with. Preparing them with tools, translations, if that's something that they need. We had a student come in just a month before the quarantine at our school, and he came from Yemen, and he did not speak any English. But as a second grader from Yemen, it was also very unclear whether he spoke a lot of his home language or read a lot of his home language. So we didn't really know how to support him at first, and we didn't know if providing him translations was even helpful, because if he didn't know how to read as a second grader in his home language, then that was a waste of our time. It was not an accommodation for him. If anything, it was just overwhelming him more. So educating, preparing, and just learning. Taking a second to say, hey, Miss Phillips, you have an ELL student coming to your classroom on Monday, and I think that we definitely need to take some time and look over some stuff, because he's from a country that you haven't taught a student from before, and I want to make sure that you're prepared and that I'm prepared. And so when I walk him down that morning, or whatever the case may be, just having those open conversations as a leader to let your teachers know you're there to support them, and that you've already picked out some different ways that they can definitely implement those new skills or practices you're encouraging them to. And lastly, inspiring. So inspiring teachers, inspiring students, inspiring everybody is going to make this so much more powerful and meaningful. Including people's cultures makes people feel special. And so you inspire them to cooperate and to participate and to be a part of that something bigger that you've created. So when you draw this very beautiful, intricate picture and you show them, these are the tools I'm going to give you to be able to be a part of this, to be a part of this bigger picture of a school, a community, a classroom, and we're all going to speak the same language of love and acceptance, then that is when your learners are going to thrive. And that is when they're going to see those opportunities to jump in and just explore, take those risks, and not worry about whether they say something wrong or whether they misunderstood your lesson, because they are more excited about being inspired and learning more than they are about just getting it right. And so just cultivating that feeling of we want to learn, and even if we mess up, we're going to get up again, and we're going to learn again, and we're going to figure out what we did wrong the first time. Just pushing that on all your students will make it more achievable for your school as a whole to be able to succeed and attain our goals. So overall, whether you're dealing with somebody who speaks English or not, you should definitely seek to inspire your students, seek to model accepting behaviors, and to show them just how important each of us are as individuals in order to make that positive whole that is so productive and wonderful in the end. Thank you.